I woke up to the sound of my mother crying because my girlfriend had just told her I was a cheater. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even blink fast enough to signal that it was a lie. The machines beeped steadily around me, but inside, everything was chaos. Michelle stood beside my hospital bed with that perfect, mournful expression on her face. Her voice shook as she whispered, "I tried to forgive him. I really did. But the truth eats at you, especially after the accident." My mother's hand covered her mouth. "Nathan would never." "He did," Michelle said softly. "A few months ago. I found the texts. A girl named Amy. They used to work together. He said it meant nothing, but..." I couldn't scream, couldn't even move my lips. All I could do was listen while the woman I loved rewrote my life in front of my own mother. I had never touched Amy. We barely even spoke outside the office, but now my mother looked like she didn't know me. Michelle gently wiped a fake tear from her cheek. "Please don't blame him. I didn't want to tell you. I just thought, you deserve to know who he really is." Then she turned to me. Her eyes met mine, calm, rehearsed, deliberate. She knew I couldn't defend myself. I had planned to propose to her the night of the accident. The ring was still in the glove box of my wrecked car. I had rehearsed every word I wanted to say. Instead, I lay there, frozen, while she dismantled 3 years of my life. That night, she took my phone, said I didn't need it anymore. My father thanked her. "You've done enough, sweetheart. We're lucky you're still here with him." She leaned down to kiss my forehead. "Rest, Nathan. I'll take care of everything." I wanted to laugh, or cry, or tear out the IV and walk out the door, but all I could do was stare at the ceiling, listening to the machine whisper the only truth anyone still believed. My heart was still beating, even if hers never had. Michelle always said I was too quiet, for my own good. She liked to fill silence with stories, with jokes, with drama I never asked for. I used to love that about her. The way she'd come home from work and throw herself onto the couch, rambling about her day. Who said what? Who wore what? Who broke up with whom? I'd listen with a soft smile, holding her hand, letting her talk until she wore herself out, and curled up beside me. We'd met in college. I was the quiet one in the back row, always early, always focused. She was the girl who walked in 10 minutes late and still managed to charm the entire room. Michelle had a way of drawing attention without even trying. It wasn't just her beauty, though she had plenty of that. It was the way she moved through the world like she owned it. I was nobody back then. A scholarship kid with secondhand clothes and a part-time job in the library. She was from a nice suburb, always dressed perfectly, never the same outfit twice. When she first talked to me, I thought it was a mistake. I remember checking behind, me thinking she must have meant someone else, but she sat beside me anyway, borrowed a pen, asked about the assignment, and then kept coming back. Over time, the gap between us closed. I helped her study for exams. She brought me food when I forgot to eat. Somewhere between our whispered conversations and long walks after class, she became mine. Or maybe I became hers. After graduation, I got a job at a mid-sized architecture firm. Nothing glamorous, but stable. Michelle struggled more. She tried photography, then content creation, then said she wanted to be a brand manager. I supported her through all of it, paid most of the bills, gave her time to figure herself out. I never complained, not even once, because I loved her, and I believed she loved me too. She knew I didn't come from much, that my parents had sacrificed everything to send me to college, that I worked double shifts during summers to save for grad school. She said I was dependable, steady, the kind of man you marry. I thought she meant it. Looking back, maybe that was my first mistake, thinking someone like Michelle would ever choose a man like me forever. The first time I noticed something off was subtle. She changed her phone password, stopped laughing at my dumb jokes, started complimenting other men. At first, just actors, then coworkers, then a guy named John. "He's just a friend," she'd say. Every time I raised an eyebrow, I never pushed, never accused. I thought giving her space was the right thing to do. Then came the night of the accident. It was supposed to be our anniversary. I booked a reservation at her favorite restaurant, bought her a necklace with our initials engraved on the back. She wore a red dress I hadn't seen before. Tight, expensive looking, not something I could have afforded. When I asked if she liked the necklace, she smiled politely. It's cute. Cute. She barely touched her food, kept checking her phone. When I asked who she was texting, she said, John just broke up with his girlfriend. He's a mess. I remember the silence that followed. Thick, uncomfortable. We left early. Drove home without a word. I wanted to talk about it, to ask her why things felt different, but I was too afraid of her answer. So I stayed quiet. It was raining that night. The roads were slick. I remember glancing at her once, just once, to say something. I don't even remember what. And then the world went black. When I opened my eyes 3 weeks later, everything was gone. My voice, my strength, my future. And the woman I had planned to marry was now sitting beside me, feeding my mother lies. Michelle had always been convincing. She could cry on command, spin stories out of thin air. It didn't surprise me that she had already written a new version of our relationship where I was the villain and she was the saint. What hurt was how easily everyone believed her. My father patted her hand. My mother hugged her. The nurses called her your sweet girlfriend. She played the role flawlessly, arriving early, leaving late, holding my hand like she still cared. But when no one was looking, her eyes were cold, like I was nothing but a burden now. A problem she hadn't figured out how to get rid of yet. She whispered things when no one else was in the room. Quiet, cruel things. You should have just died, Nathan. That would have been easier. Or, do you know how exhausting this is? Having to pretend like I still love you? I couldn't respond, couldn't fight back, couldn't even cry. But I heard everything, and I remembered. I remembered every word, every lie, every touch that no longer meant anything. And the worst part was, I still loved her, even when she was lying, even when she was cruel. I still wanted her to look at me the way she used to. But the man she had loved, the strong one, the steady one, was gone now. And all that was left was this broken body and a shattered heart. The day the therapist told me I might never speak clearly again, Michelle smiled. Not the kind of smile that comes from relief or hope, but one that flickered across her lips too quickly, like an instinct she didn't mean to show. I caught it in the mirror behind her, a flash of satisfaction, gone before anyone else noticed. But I noticed. That same afternoon, I was wheeled back into my room by an aide named Marcus, a kind man, quiet, like me. He adjusted the pillows behind my back, asked if I was comfortable, then stepped out to give me space. Michelle was already waiting by the window. She walked over slowly, her heels clicking against the tile floor. They said your speech might never come back, she said, her voice too calm. That's a lot to process. I tried to form a sound. Nothing but a strained breath came out. My fingers twitched. She saw the effort, but made no move to help. Instead, she leaned closer, whispering, I should have known it would come to this. You were always the type to hold things in, silent to the end. I stared at her, willing her to stop, but she didn't. You know, John said something interesting last night. He said maybe this was karma, that maybe you finally got what you deserved. I blinked once, slowly. My chest was burning, not from the stroke. From her, John. So it wasn't just texting. It wasn't just a friend. She placed a hand on my leg, soft and possessive. I didn't want it to end this way, Nathan. But things were already falling apart, weren't they? You felt it too. No. I hadn't. I had planned a future. She had planned an exit. For weeks, she played the grieving girlfriend. She cried in front of my parents, made small talk with nurses, fed me, wiped my mouth when I choked on water. but the truth was clear now. She was waiting for me to fade. Every gesture of kindness had been a performance, and while I was fighting to survive, she was already moving on. The next day, my mother arrived looking hollow. She didn't greet me like she usually did, didn't kiss my forehead or ask how I slept. She just sat down beside me and placed a photo frame on my lap. It was turned face down. "I wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt," she whispered, "but Michelle showed me your messages." My hands shook as I flipped the frame. It was a printout. A screenshot of a text thread, dozens of messages between me and someone named Amy, flirtatious, explicit. My name was at the top of every reply. I stared at the screen, frozen, fake. All of it, but real enough to look convincing to someone like my mother. "She said you'd been unfaithful for months," my mother continued, her voice breaking. "That you lied every time you said you were working late. That you were planning to leave her for another woman." My stomach churned. Michelle had created the perfect illusion. She'd forged entire conversations, enough to turn the people who loved me into strangers. My mother couldn't even look me in the eye now. My father didn't visit that week. Michelle had isolated me with surgical precision. No one else had access to my voice, or lack thereof. Just her. And that night, she came back again. Same soft voice, same perfect hair. She adjusted the blanket over me, made it look like she cared. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I told them everything, Nathan," she whispered. "They believe me." "Why wouldn't they? You can't even deny it." I glared at her. My jaw clenched, my heart thundered. "I used to wonder if you were too boring for me, too quiet, too routine. But now you're not even a man anymore. You're just still." She laughed softly, cruelly. "John thinks I'm a saint for staying by your side. Maybe I'll marry him one day. But for now, being your devoted girlfriend earns a lot of sympathy points." That's when I knew. This wasn't just betrayal. It was annihilation. She wasn't content with leaving me. She wanted to destroy me, my relationships, my memory, everything I had worked for. She was turning me into a villain so she could play the victim. But there was one thing she had miscalculated. I wasn't as helpless as I looked. I had been slowly regaining control in my left hand. The tremors had stopped. I could now move my fingers, just enough to hold a pen. I had a notepad in my drawer. I waited until she left that night. Then, with painstaking effort, I wrote one word: record. It was sloppy, barely legible, but it was something. She thought I couldn't fight back, that I was trapped, that silence made me easy to bury. But I wasn't buried. I was watching, and soon, I'd be remembering everything. The hardest part wasn't the pain. It wasn't the therapy sessions that left my muscles screaming or the endless scans and blood tests. It wasn't even the looks of pity from nurses who talked to me like I was a child. The hardest part was knowing the people I loved no longer believed in me. Every morning I woke to the same ceiling, the same sterile light. I couldn't speak, couldn't run, couldn't scream. And yet my mind was on fire. I remembered everything, every lie Michelle whispered into my mother's ear, every glance she exchanged with John when she thought no one was watching. Every time she wiped my face and whispered, "You're lucky I stayed." She hadn't stayed. Not really. She had buried me alive and painted herself a saint. The hospital became a stage, and Michelle performed like a seasoned actress. She wore soft colors, styled her hair in loose waves, always just messy enough to look tired but still beautiful. The nurses adored her. My mother called her an angel. Visitors looked at me with quiet shame. The story had already been written, and I was the villain in it. I was alone in a room full of people, and no one could hear me. Sometimes, late at night, when the hallways were quiet, I cried. Not loudly, not in the way most people cry. My chest would rise in shallow jerks, my face contorting with soundless pain. My throat, still too weak to carry words, would only manage a strangled wheeze. But it was enough. Enough to remind me that I still felt, still hurt, still existed. I hated how much I still loved her. That was the worst part. Even after the lies, even after she stripped me of my voice, my name, and my dignity, I still remembered how she used to hold me when I had nightmares, how she used to fall asleep with her head on my chest, how she'd once told me, in a whisper so soft I almost missed it, "You're the safest place I've ever known." Maybe that's why it hurt so much, because I hadn't just lost a girlfriend. I had lost a version of reality I thought was real. The Nathan she loved didn't exist anymore. Not because of the stroke, but because he had never really mattered to her. He was just a placeholder, a provider, a fool who didn't ask too many questions. One night, after another speech therapy session left me drained and dizzy, I caught her scrolling through her phone beside my bed. She wasn't crying. She wasn't worried. She was smiling at something. I shifted just enough to glance at the screen. It was a picture of her and John, matching sunglasses, a beach in the background. They were laughing. The timestamp? 2 weeks after my accident. She caught me staring and simply turned the phone over without a word. I didn't sleep that night. My thoughts ran wild, memories turning against me like poisoned blades. Every kiss, every whispered promise, every "I love you" now sounded like mockery. I clutched the bedsheet in my good hand, digging my nails into the fabric until I thought I might tear it apart. The nurse came in the next morning and asked if I was in pain. I nodded, but it wasn't the kind of pain morphine could touch. That was the day I decided I wouldn't let her win. Not by being silent. Not by waiting for someone else to believe me. If no one was going to save me, then I'd save myself. One shaky step at a time. I started practicing in secret, moving my fingers in slow, painful patterns, repeating vowel sounds in my mind, whispering syllables into the pillow when no one was around. It was pathetic, pitiful, but it was mine. It was real. The more I hurt, the more alive I felt. And the more alive I felt, the more dangerous I became. Michelle still thought I was broken, but I was healing, and healing men remember everything, every betrayal, every lie, every smirk she flashed, when she thought I was too far gone to notice. I wasn't, and the day I stood again, even if I had to crawl first, would be the day I'd tear down the house she built on my grave. Brick by brick. I thought I had seen the worst of her. I thought the lies, the fake messages, the way she smiled at my mother while stabbing me in the back, that was Michelle at her most cruel. I was wrong. The day started quietly. A nurse brought me breakfast. I managed to grip the spoon myself, clumsy, slow, but mine. It was a win, a small one. Michelle didn't visit that morning, which made it better. The room felt lighter without her. Around noon, a social worker came in with a folder. She smiled politely. "Nathan, your discharge plan is being reviewed. You'll likely be transferred to a rehabilitation center in 2 weeks." I blinked in surprise. 2 weeks. That was sooner than expected. Then she hesitated. "There's one more thing. Since your case involves limited mobility and communication challenges, the hospital needed to confirm your aftercare arrangements. Michelle submitted documentation last night." "Michelle?" I tensed. "She brought a signed letter stating that you authorized her to manage your finances and care decisions until you're fully recovered." I stared at her, heart dropping. "She submitted it to administration along with a notarized medical proxy," the social worker continued, flipping through her file. "It lists her as your legal caretaker." I couldn't speak, but my body trembled with rage. That letter was forged. I never signed anything. And even if I had tried, my hands had barely regained control days ago. She'd stolen my phone. Now she had stolen my name, my authority, my future. I shook my head violently, but the woman only looked confused. "She told us you might be disoriented, that you'd been showing signs of cognitive distress, that sometimes you confuse fiction with reality." The walls closed in. Michelle hadn't just been preparing to leave. She was preparing to erase me entirely. She wanted my accounts, my apartment, every cent I had worked for. She was setting the stage to move on, and she wanted to make sure when she did, I wouldn't even have a voice to stop her. I gritted my teeth, forcing my lips apart. The sound that came out was broken. Hoarse, but it was real. Oh. The social worker froze. I said it again. No. Tears welled in her eyes. You can speak? I nodded slowly, my throat burning. She leaned forward, suddenly aware that something was deeply wrong. Nathan, do you object to Michelle's documentation? I mouthed the word again. Yes. She stood up quickly. I'll notify legal immediately. Don't worry. We'll take care of this. But I knew it wouldn't be that easy. Michelle had already wormed her way into every corner of my life. She was smart, calculated. By the time I got discharged, she'd have rewritten every last page of our story, unless I moved faster, unless I hit back first. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was war. Michelle walked into my room 2 days later, like nothing had changed. She brought flowers. She smiled. She sat beside me and reached for my hand as if she hadn't tried to steal my life. I heard the hospital's moving you to rehab soon, she said sweetly. That's good. You'll be one step closer to walking again. I didn't react, didn't blink. I waited. She leaned in and brushed something invisible off my blanket. I've been handling everything for you, you know. Your landlord was asking about your lease. I told him not to worry, that I'd be moving your things next week. I clenched my jaw. She was really going to do it. Clear out my apartment, my bank account, my name. All while smiling over my hospital bed like she still cared. The social worker had launched a legal review on her forged proxy, but paperwork took time, and Michelle was running out of patience. But so was I. 2 hours later, while she was in the cafeteria, I called the one person she never expected, Amy. The real one. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. We were never close, just colleagues who occasionally shared lunch during shifts. I had always respected her, kept my distance, but her number was still memorized. One of the few things my scrambled brain hadn't lost. When she answered, her voice was cautious. Hello? I took a deep breath. My voice was still rough, broken in places, but it came out. Amy? This is Nathan. A pause. Then a gasp. Oh my God. Nathan? I heard about your stroke. Are you okay? What? How are you? I need your help, I whispered, and I told her everything. The fake messages, the cheating accusation, the medical proxy Michelle had forged. I told her about the hospital believing her, about my family turning cold, about the silence I'd been trapped in since the day of the accident. Amy listened without interrupting. When I finished, her voice was sharp. I never messaged you like that. Never. She forged it? She did. There was a pause, then a soft curse. I still have my phone logs. I still have our real messages. Barely anything outside work. I can back you up. Just tell me what to do. By the end of the call, we had a plan. The next day, Amy arrived at the hospital, holding her phone and printed transcripts in a neat folder. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't smile. She walked straight to the administrative office and requested to speak with hospital legal and the patient advocacy rep. Michelle showed up minutes later. I was already waiting in the hallway in a wheelchair, the social worker beside me. My fingers rested calmly in my lap, but my heart pounded with every breath. Michelle's eyes widened when she saw Amy. What is she doing here? She asked, voice tight. Amy stepped forward. I'm here to correct a lie. Michelle's smile faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, I said clearly. The entire hallway went quiet. Michelle turned to me in disbelief. You can talk? I nodded once. You told everyone I cheated with Amy, I said, slowly. You forged conversations. You manipulated my parents. You lied to the hospital and stole my proxy. And you thought I'd stay silent forever. Michelle's expression wavered. She glanced at the administrators, their faces now stern and watchful. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's confused. The doctors said he's been experiencing memory gaps. I remember everything, I said. I remember you smiling the day I lost my voice. I remember you showing my mother fake messages. I remember you whispering to me when I couldn't fight back. You told me I deserved it. I didn't. Amy stepped beside me. These are the real messages between me and Nathan. They've never been flirty, never inappropriate. I never sent those screenshots you showed his parents. She handed the folder to the head of legal. You can cross-reference timestamps, phone records, anything you want. I'm here to testify. Michelle's hands trembled. The hospital director narrowed his eyes. Miss Michelle, we'll need to speak with you privately. Until then, your access to Mr. Nathan's medical information is suspended. No, Michelle snapped. You're making a mistake. He's manipulating all of you. He's faking this entire thing. I looked her in the eye, calm and steady. You built your whole life around one lie, I said, and now it's collapsing. The administrators walked her out of the hallway. She didn't scream, didn't cry, just turned one last time and glared at me like I was the one who had betrayed her. But I didn't flinch. Amy placed a hand gently on my shoulder. You okay? I nodded slowly. Now I am. My parents visited later that day. The air was thick with guilt. My mother stared at the floor. My father couldn't look me in the eye. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. She finally broke down first. I'm sorry, she whispered. I believed her. I thought you had broken her heart. She broke everything, I said, and you helped her do it. She started crying. My father held her close. It didn't fix anything, but it was something, a beginning. 2 days later, Michelle vanished. Her things were gone. Her phone disconnected. She didn't answer emails. I didn't care. I had already begun filing charges, with Amy's help. Fraud, forgery, defamation. She wouldn't disappear for long. Somewhere, the woman who had nearly buried me was running scared, and for once she should be. Because the man she tried to erase wasn't gone. He had just started speaking again. Michelle didn't disappear for long. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I received a call from the hospital's legal department. They'd found her. She had tried to flee the city using a friend's identity, someone from her old photography circle, but she hadn't made it. Far. Fraud had a trail, and Michelle wasn't as clever as she thought she was. The hospital pressed charges on their end, falsifying medical documents, impersonating a legal proxy, tampering with patient care records. My case followed swiftly: defamation, financial fraud, and emotional abuse, all backed by Amy's testimony, my audio recordings, and a carefully collected series of dates and details that proved Michelle had been living off my accounts while simultaneously preparing to abandon me. The courts accepted everything, and Michelle was forced to show up. She entered the courtroom with sunglasses, a scarf around her neck, and a lawyer who looked like he was trying not to make eye contact with her. Her expression was different now. Gone was the confident, smiling girlfriend who had once played victim so well. What sat in her place was a woman cornered, exposed, hated. I didn't flinch when she looked at me. I didn't need to anymore. My voice, though still rough, was steady. My walk, though aided, was upright. I faced her with the same silence she once mocked. Only now, it was hers to fear. During the hearing, I read a short statement. I was supposed to propose to her the night of my accident, I said. Instead, while I lay half paralyzed, she stole my voice, forged my downfall, and rewrote my life into a lie that suited her version of survival. She didn't just betray me, I continued. She planned it. She fed on it. She made sure I had no one left to believe me. But I did survive. And now I speak, not for revenge, but because silence no longer serves me. The judge ruled in my favor. Michelle was sentenced to 14 months of jail time for identity fraud and forgery, and forced to pay restitution, most of which came from liquidating what remained of her brand partnerships and social accounts, which had all but collapsed under the weight of the scandal. Her face trended online for all the wrong reasons. Once adored by my friends and family, now her name was synonymous with betrayal. Every time someone searched Michelle, hospital fraud, my story appeared first. But I wasn't finished. The most satisfying part came after the sentencing, when she was escorted out in cuffs, screaming that I had ruined her life. That was the first time I laughed in months, not out of cruelty, but relief. She hadn't ruined me. I had outlived her destruction. John, for what it's worth, tried to disappear too. But his company cut ties when media pressure mounted. He was later exposed in a workplace harassment case completely unrelated to mine, but poetic in its timing. It turns out people like him always leave wreckage behind. Karma just needed a little. Push Amy, meanwhile, became a constant presence, not out of obligation, but choice. We never rushed anything. She was patient, kind. The way she'd check on my recovery without pity, the way she'd remind me to sit up straighter when my shoulders slouched. Those were the gestures that mattered, and for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. One afternoon, a year after the trial, we sat at a quiet cafe overlooking the river. I no longer used a cane. My speech had improved dramatically. I even laughed again, freely, without the bitterness that used to sit. Beneath it, Amy handed me a wrapped box. I raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a black journal with gold lettering. On the cover, it read, "The Man Who Spoke Again." "You should write it," she said. "Not just what happened, but everything you felt, everything you remembered." I stared at the pages, blank, waiting. And for once, I wasn't afraid to fill them. A month later, I published the story. Not under my real name, but anonymously, on a blog that began to gain traction fast. People commented by the thousands. Some had lived through betrayal. Others had been falsely accused, silenced by loved ones, discarded by people they trusted. They saw themselves in me. And more importantly, they saw that survival was possible, that healing could look like justice, that sometimes the quiet ones. Write the final chapter. Then came the message that sealed everything. It was from Michelle's prison email system. Just a few lines. "You won. Is that what you wanted? I hope you're happy now. I hope you never sleep peacefully again." I stared at it for a full minute before replying, "I do sleep peacefully now, because I'm no longer surrounded by liars." Then I blocked her, forever. There was nothing left to say, not from her, not from me. I had already said everything I needed to, with my silence, with my voice, with the life I had rebuilt. 6 months later, I stood at a quiet overlook beside Amy, the same one where I once planned to propose to Michelle. This time there were no nerves. No lies, just truth. Amy looked at me surprised as I dropped to one knee and pulled out a ring. "No script," I said. "No big speech, just a real beginning." She didn't hesitate. "Yes," she whispered, and as I slid the ring onto her finger, I realized something I hadn't understood until that moment. Revenge had ended the story, but love, that gave it meaning.